Okay, this time I'd like to recall our Rapid Central School District Board of Education meeting Tuesday, November 3rd, 2015, to order. Record board members are present. So we can stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledging allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have there. She has student report, please. Rachel, thank you.
Awesome, it's on, but it's too tall. But I'm good. Fix it. Okay. So I just want you guys to know before I start that today, obviously we all had off, but I used today to work on a Euro project, AP Euro project that I had to do. And I thought that might be nice to know that I used my day off. So, no, I'm kidding. No, okay. I still have homework to do, but I did finish some stuff. Anyway, so the football team beat North Rockland last week, which is amazing. So they finished the season well. So November 10th is the World Language Honor Society induction. And I believe those are all the languages we teach at Suffern, which I believe are Spanish, Italian, French, and Chinese. I might have left one out, but that sounds right. And then the end of next week is the fall play, which I have been very involved in stage crew, as I always am, and as a senior, there's this big featured piece of art on the set, and as a senior, I was able to direct kind of how that worked out, and it came out pretty well. So if you guys end up coming, I hope you see it. If any of you guys end up coming, I can bring you backstage. And the 12th and the 13th, it's at 7 p.m. And the 14th, it's at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. So there's a bunch of options for everybody to come. So I hope to see you there and have a good week, 2 weeks.
Thank you. Okay, 1.08 minutes of the regular meeting of October 20th, 2015. Chair would entertain a motion to accept those minutes as so stated.
So moved.
Ms. Danzig, second. Mr. Osborne. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Ms. Monahan. Superintendent's comments.
My comments are related to the athletics update, and this was showing before we got down here, but basically recognition of a lot of success that we experienced this fall in all of our programs, and highlighting a couple of points: the girls swim team, county champs, and then if you look at the cross country, siblings were individual county champs, and it's the first time a sibling combo won the county title in the same year. And where our teams did lose in the playoffs, they proceeded very far along. I do not know how the girls volleyball team did today. They were playing Arlington. Does anybody know how they did? And then our girls tennis, Sydney Kaplan was the first ever individual section champ for Suffern. And then, unfortunately, yesterday she lost in the state championship, 6-2, 6-2. But a phenomenal season for her. Our football team, as Rachel announced, they defeated North Rockland for the first time, and it's debatable if it's 30 years or 31 years or 35 years, but it's been a long time. They finished 7-2 and really had a great season. And then, if we look at our county champions for JV, boys soccer undefeated, field hockey undefeated, and our girls volleyball team were JV county champions. So just to share an update on how our athletic teams did in the fall. I do notice a couple of coaches out here for the winter season. I won't announce their names, don't want to embarrass anybody. And maybe one or two parents that have kids playing this winter season. So good luck for the winter season as it comes upon us. That's it, Madam President.
That's great, thank you. Great sports program. Here we are, public participation. Public participation, this is public participation as to action items only. Those are items 2.01 through 2.13.
Yes.
This portion of the meeting will last no longer than 30 minutes. If you would like to speak, please approach the podium, state your name, address school affiliation if you represent a group or organization. Please, one single spokesperson for said group or organization. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please address your remarks to the president of the board. And although it is not a question and answer, and I say this at every meeting, a question and answer type of forum, and even if the board does not comment, we're still listening. We hear what you have to say. We'll provide appropriate feedback after the meeting. I usually try to do it by way of email. Sometimes I don't have email addresses, so if you would like to leave an email address, would be great. And again, I certainly don't want to cut any speakers off who want to speak in front from the public, but I would remind you with respect to policies 1230, 1400, and 3240 to refrain from discussing district employees or, for that matter, students. Any public participation? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public participation portion of the meeting. With respect to action items 2.01 through 2.13, would like to use a consent agenda for those items. Is there any objection by any board members? Yeah, just speak loudly.
I'd like to pull out item 2.02.
Okay, anything else? All right, so with respect to 2.01 and then 2.03 to 2.13, excluding 2.02, Chair would entertain a motion to accept those as so stated. So moved. Ms. Danzig? Second?
Second.
Ms. Monahan? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous. Okay, with respect to then 2.02, Chair would entertain a motion to accept 2.02 as so stated. So moved. Ms. Danzig? Second?
Second.
Mr. Long? Sorry, I had to think about your name for a second. Any discussion? Amani?
So while I can't really go into details regarding this item because it pertains to personnel matter, my vote is a reserved vote due to the fact that the information shared today was new and, sorry, my microphone's not working, and was not exactly the information we originally had presented to us in the past. So hence why I pulled the item.
So are you just for the purpose of voting, you're going to abstain or vote no? Well, I don't have to answer. We'll just
Exactly,
vote.
I'm going to vote however I vote. I
Yeah,
need
that's
to make the comment clear that the information shared today was, again, not the same information that I had received prior to today, so.
Okay.
So it's a reserved, it's a reserved.
All right, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed?
It's an aye for me, reserved aye, thank you.
I'm not sure if it's a reserved aye.
It's an aye.
It's an aye. Okay, so it's an aye. All right, that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, due to a scheduling issue with the next presenter, if the board doesn't have any objection, I'd like to take the information items first and then go back to the administrative reports. I think Lee Weber will be presenting the information items and she has somewhere to be, let's just say. So if no objection, I would go then to number 4.01. Lee, if you would.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I have 3 information items this evening. The first is about the educator involvement opportunities. These were opportunities, it was from a request issued by State Ed on behalf of the vendor of the new 3 through 8 tests. We have about a half a dozen 3 through 8 teachers who've expressed interest in being included in various aspects of the test development process from the new vendor. One of those teachers was from one of the sessions that has already taken place, and she was accepted to be on the group, and then when she replied and confirmed, she was told there was no room. So they must have accepted more than they actually had seats for, which was very frustrating. But I do want to commend that teacher for, expressing her interest in doing it. She was committed to doing it, and unfortunately, she didn't have the chance. The other 5 or 6 teachers, their committees haven't met yet, so their deadline actually hasn't even come up to express the interest. But we do have about a half dozen who've expressed interest, so that's very exciting. We also have one teacher who I think I just saw walk in, Dr. Maria May, who has been selected and is serving on the Governor's Common Core Task Force. So we thank her very much for that role. So we look forward, as folks come back from these events, obviously there's things they're not going to be able to share, but we're excited to hear about the things that they are able to share. And we know for a fact that they are actually participating in them.
That's great. That's great representation. Applaud the teachers for taking part.
The next item is the Clarity Survey. Those of you who are parents would have received the Connect Ed messages last night. The Clarity Survey, as a reminder, is the technology survey that we took last year as well. Already last night, we had 280 parents respond to the survey. It takes overnight for the results to post, so today I'm able to see how many responses there were last night. In addition, we have QR codes set up in the entries and pickup areas of each building. So we have QR codes so parents can scan it on their phone. We also have devices set up as parents come into the buildings, either with the security guard or in the main office, depending on the building, to facilitate those parents who may not have a device at home. It does require them to come in. It can be done on any device. I did it on my phone. I don't think it took me 4 minutes. It was so quick, I did both my schools.
Are you supposed to do both the schools?
You can. It's a choice. If you have kids in multiple schools, the advice is to do it for your oldest child, the thinking that they've had the most experience in school.
Sure.
But if you want, you can do it for multiple schools.
So with regards to the Clarity Survey, I remember when you presented the results last year, that was the one that gave us some indication about internet access. I don't know, because I've asked multiple times but haven't received information about what we're doing to assess internet access in kids. But from what I recall from the Clarity Survey last year, it was not as clear whether or not when kids or parents answered that question, internet access meant they had an iPhone at home, or if they actually had a device on which they could do homework. Is this Clarity Survey that's going out this year going to be more specific and clearer about that question? Or do we already have information about internet access at home? Or is this going to be what you're depending on to get that information? And those results, I'm assuming, won't come until December.
So the most important thing about the survey is it's anonymous. So we have no way of telling who answered what question. So that's important to know. And it goes both ways. It's an anonymous survey, but that also means you can't follow up on certain responses. You just get percentages back. You don't know specifically who the people are.
Are the questions going to be clear, however? Because last year one
did
of the
you take the
problems
survey?
was, not yet, but I saw the results that were presented last year.
Okay.
And
So-
it was unclear whether internet access meant they had an iPhone at home or they had a computer. When I
So-
asked,
so
you said you weren't able to filter the data in that way.
Because they're anonymous, we can't do it by student. We know that X% of students have a desktop. We know X% of students have a laptop. We know X% of students have an iPad. We know X% of students have an iPhone. Or a smartphone. We don't know which of those students necessarily have all 4 of those devices. So it does not give us that granular level of data.
So there's no question that says, do you have internet access at home, which is not an iPhone, upon which you can do homework? It doesn't have a question like that.
That question is not on the survey. This is a nationwide survey given to 15% of schools across the country use this survey. That question was not on the survey that I answered.
Okay, so the Clarity Survey is not going to give us information, which I've been seeking, which is what percentage of kids in this district don't have internet access at home to do homework?
No, the children who will have a device, who take the survey in school, so we ensure they have a device, will answer questions. One of the questions they're answered, they are asked, is do you have internet access at home?
Right.
They answer that question. They answer a question about the different devices. What we can't do on a granular level is identify that this student, student A, who attends school 3, has internet access, has a laptop, and a smartphone. We cannot get that level of granular data. We get that level of data when we talk to the children.
Right,
When the
I
teacher
get that the
talks to
clarity
the
survey is
children.
not gonna give us this information, so
Correct.
do we have a plan? This is still my same question that I've been asking since last year. What is our plan to assess internet access in kids? Have we been doing this? Do we have any data on which kids need support?
We have, it varies by school, and most teachers know exactly what access their students have and their parents have, because that's how they contact parents, and it's how they work with parents and children. So the best answer to the granular level of data is the teacher, the classroom teacher.
And so we're not, as a district, collecting information about how many teachers have students that need more assistance in internet access. Can that be presented at the same time as you present the results of the clarity survey? Is there anything ongoing to evaluate that question?
We can look at the possibility of doing that. Yes.
This survey, it is bilingual, correct?
Yes, and in fact, they improved the bilingual feature of it, and that was in the Connect Ed that went out. Last year, it was actually separate links to take it in English or Spanish. This year, it's just a toggle in the corner. And there's actually more than, I believe there's more than just English and Spanish.
And I know that this won't help now, but long-term thinking, to Marlisa's point, we send out a ton of stuff for families, parents to fill out at the beginning of the year. I know we don't need more stuff, but is there a way, would it be possible to gauge that answer by asking that question, whether it's on the emergency card or whether it's some other document that we send out that comes back to us? Is there a way to maybe find that out, even if it's not now, because I know that ship sails to getting that information. The clarity survey isn't going to give us that much information. We will know how many kids have internet service, but not necessarily do they have a device to use the internet service to be able to do homework. But that might be something that we think about as a potential. So.
Continuing with the information on that survey, most of the teachers took the survey today. They were given time during the superintendent's conference day today to take the survey. I don't know how many took it, as I said, because it takes overnight to post, so I'll know tomorrow how many teachers took it today. Students in grades 3 through 12 will be completing the survey over the next 2 weeks. The window for all participants ends on November 13th, so the window's the same for everyone. Kids will be taking it at school, and so that ensures the equity of access for students. It will yield similar data to last year, as well as providing a comparison over time. So last year was our baseline year, so this year the data we have provides, the change over time.
Anything else?
Yes, Superintendent's Conference Day was today. The highlight of our Superintendent's Conference Day today was our keynote speaker, Dr. Helene Marshall from LIU, and she spoke on the topic of culturally responsive teaching. 4 of the schools attended the live presentation this morning, which was followed by a debrief, and the other 3 schools viewed it as a video this afternoon. She was only available early in the morning, and because of the different start and end times of the buildings, we sort of staggered her presentation. Dr. Marshall characterized culturally responsive teaching as using the cultural characteristics, experiences, and perspectives of ethnically diverse students as conduits for teaching them more effectively. She spoke of MALP, which is the mutually adaptive learning paradigm, as a framework for accepting the conditions from which our English language learners come, combining the processes with which they are accustomed with how we do school here. So that often when kids come, there are cultural differences about how we learn and how we do school. So she talked a lot about how to integrate those and helping students transition to challenging academic tasks. The presentation was informative and thought-provoking and elicited a variety of reactions from staff, which were shared during the debrief and in an optional survey response. I'd like to thank Dr. Castaldo-Green for making this event happen, along with Ms. Katie Mercury, who had done her graduate work with Dr. Marshall, and Ms. Taryn Rivera, who prepared all of the materials for our debrief. I'd also like to thank the teachers and administrators who stepped in and facilitated the debriefing sessions after a number of teachers declined to facilitate those sessions. Each building or department also implemented their own professional development during the other half of the day. Some of the topics that were focused on included writing, math, literacy, social studies, SLOs, curricular revisions, art integration for STEAM, positive behavioral management, and mental health first aid training.
Wow.
It was a busy day.
Busy day. That's great, thank you. Any questions? Okay. We won't be insulted.
I am going to stay for the season.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we'll go back then to 3.01, just a study regarding determine the efficiencies and effectiveness of the Ranford Central Pupil Transportation Services.
Very good. I'm Richard O'Hola.
Thank you.
I'm the Senior Management Consultant for the Pupil Transportation Safety Institute. And I've done work before for your school district, and I'm glad to be back here. Last June, I did a review of efficiencies and economies. I interviewed school and transportation officials, reviewed policy, reviewed relevant case law, visited public and multiple non-public school facilities. You transport from 4,300 kids to 110 different schools operated by BOCES, non-public schools, and of course there's 7 public schools in the district. Most of the schools are out of district, only 7 non-public schools located within the district that we provide transportation for. I rode buses serving both public and non-public schools, observed the high school loading situation and agreed with the recommendation for a new drop-off location and process. And I visited the school bus facility operated by Chestnut Ridge Transit. What you should know is that the transportation for your school district is efficient. Your cost per pupil is less than the state average and comparable to many of the very efficient school districts which operate in Rockland County. I've done a lot of work in Rockland County, and I have a lot of, I hold the transportation programs in the county in, for the most part, in high esteem. You spend $6.9 million a year. Your transportation supervisor's office expense is less than 3%, which is remarkable. Basically, your school district and other Rockland school districts provide cost-efficient transportation, which is better than state average. Rena Gessner is the transportation supervisor, and she is responsible for the contracts. The current contract, which was extended at 0% for this year because of the very small increase in CPI, was originally led by your Board of Education based upon a request for proposal developed by my organization, and that has served you very well. Chestnut Ridge, which is the company that serves the school district, is one which has a national reputation. John Core is in the Hall of Fame for the National School Transportation Association. Tim Flood, the Vice President of Chestnut Ridge, has been named as Contractor of the Year by both national and state organizations. Trench Group, which is the father and mother organization for Chestnut Ridge, has won numerous awards for not only safety but also in terms of environmental protection, and is considered to be a very green company on the leading edge. Non-public school transportation was something that I looked at quite extensively, not only because of the number of non-public schools you transport to, but because of Ms. Gessner's handbook, which is the best that I've ever seen, that addresses the operating procedures for providing transportation to non-public schools located within 15 miles of the district. You transport all your kids, but many of your kids attend schools which are not located in the district. One of the things that you get is requests for multiple arrival and dismissal times, and basically the handbook advocates for cooperation with the non-public schools to provide a arrival and dismissal time for the buses, which meets both the needs of the school and the school district and is efficient. You do not have to provide multiple arrivals and dismissals, which the commissioner would consider to be unreasonable. Your late bus policy right now, is, as of June, was you provide late buses for a school, for either public or non-public, that had requests for 10 or more pupils. 10 pupils on 60 passenger buses is very efficient, so I suggested that the school district look at both the public school needs and non-public school needs, and maybe increase that, and 15 is probably not a bad number. One of the things that you get are requests from non-public schools, and most of them are outside the district, and even though the responsibility for determining equivalency of instruction rests with the superintendent of schools of the school district in which the school is located, if you're sending your kids to a school, you should make sure that that school is a safe place for your kids to be. And that means that you should require both a certificate of occupancy that's specific for educational facilities and an annual fire inspection report. The annual fire inspection report has been a requirement since 1955 and should not be new to anybody who's running a school. One of the things that Rena gets every once in a while are requests for gender-based transportation, boys schools, girls schools, male drivers for boys, female drivers for girls, and quite frankly, it's not consistent with law, and those kinds of requests should be turned down. Also, transportation to an individual school, where the request is that you only put kids going to a particular school on a bus. That's inefficient and not necessary. There are shared opportunities that you're starting to take advantage of. I point out that the major contractor for both East Ramapo and for Ramapo is Chestnut Ridge, and so that the obvious thing is that there's room there for cooperation where you're going to the same facilities. In many cases, you probably are. Any questions?
Melissa?
Thank you. So when you mentioned that transportation should be denied to facilities that lack appropriate certificate of occupancy or lack a clean current fire inspection report, is that something that legally we're required to see? Or how does that work? Have people in other districts refused transportation to schools that don't have this?
The requirement for equivalency of instruction, including those two items, rests with the superintendent of schools where the non-public school is located. However, when you're sending your kids to a facility, you have an obligation, and I think your lawyer would tell you that there's a liability implication to make sure that that school is a safe place, that has been designed as an educational facility, and it has a current fire inspection report that's required every year.
So when we send the kid, Dr. Adams, we see these, we obtain these, and so we're sure that, okay,
Yes.
all right.
That's one of the things that Rena has in her handbook, which is disseminated to non-public schools and to parents of kids attending non-public schools.
any questions? Monty?
Just to follow up on Dr. Howard's, Rita, do we sometimes have difficulty getting the COs from some schools?
Well, we just, in the past, we were requiring the certificate of occupancy or the fire inspection report. You know, we just through the study, we realized that we needed to change the language. I don't know if you noticed in our handbook, we had said and or, either or. So now we just had you to pass a resolution stating that we want to require both. And yes, we have extreme difficulty getting any information, but now with this new policy that we just adopted, it's the board policy, and certainly going forward, that's what we will follow.
One of the problems that you have is that you have some non-public schools that operate more than one building. They should have, each building should have a specific bench code assigned by state ed, which would identify the school, and that number would be on the certificate of occupancy and the fire inspection report. And that's one of the areas where better cooperation has to occur on the part of non-public schools. And I talked to state ed about it, they agree.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Monty had a question.
So my question is, was part of this review looking at where we could save money still in spite of doing so great in terms of our out-of-district transportation?
I think simply looking for areas of cooperation, and my understanding is that since my visit here, that you've already started some services with the Rockabosis, and certainly cooperating with school districts that are being served by Chestnut Ridge would be in order.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much. Thank you. Just, to commend administration, and I'll quote from the report, that the handbook, this private school transportation handbook, is the best the consultant has ever seen, which is, thank you to...
And I've been doing it a long time.
Thank you. Okay, next, here we go. This would be Sloatsburg Elementary School. Welcome, Mr. Lloyd.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board members. Good evening, Central Office Administration. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to present the Sloatsburg Elementary School Comprehensive Improvement Plan. By the way, I do come from North Rock. I caught a lot of grief from my old friends from North Rock. I stopped and beat up on North Rock last weekend.
So sorry.
My response to them was mounting pride. I want to thank the Rampo Central School District and Central Office Administration for their support over the summertime and through part of the fall. We had several logos imprinted in our school, in the main lobby, in the gymnasium, the conference room. And it's exciting for us to be able to brand ourselves not only visually, but within the facility of Sloatsburg. So when people walk into the building, they know exactly where they are. Thank you. Speaking of Sloatsburg Elementary School, our vision is to develop literate, critical thinkers who possess creativity, character, and practice healthy living. They're inspiring them to believe in themselves while reaching their highest potential. With that in mind, we have 3 priorities. That's to develop literate students, that's to develop critical thinkers, that's to foster a school program that's predicated upon sustainability, student, family, community engagement, while promoting a safe and nurturing school environment. So with that in mind, priority 1 is to develop literate students. And the first goal within that priority is that grade level cohorts will meet the developmental reading assessment, which is commonly spoken as the DRA2, benchmarks to make yearly growth. One thing I wanted to note is that these particular goals are based on last June's results. So we took a look at how our students did last year when they were in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. We looked at cohort trends over the years, and now we developed these new goals for the 2015-2016 school year. One thing I'd also like to note that's a little bit different than last year is that if you take a look, for example, in 1st grade, you have a high percentage of children who are exiting on grade level. We're going to not only ask them to maintain that in 1st grade, graduate on grade level, we're going to see if they could actually achieve 1 year's growth, which would put them past the end of 1st grade into maybe mid-2nd grade. So a new little goal that we rolled up after speaking to Central Office Administration. We're kind of excited about it. We use a number of measures throughout the year to see how we're doing. Dr. Adams likes to call these lead measures. So on the left, the image on the left is actually the DRA benchmarks that we're measuring students against throughout the school year. So for example, if I was looking, December's coming up pretty soon, that's a target month for us at Salzburg. So if I was looking at second grade, I'm hoping that a good number of our students are reading at 18 to level 20. So what we will do is, on the right, that is a snapshot of our DRA database that we maintain at Salzburg Elementary School. It's not populated because we didn't want to have any student information in there. But basically, we could look at any point in the school year and say to ourselves, okay, well, we're looking at Mrs. Conklin's first grade classroom. We know where all her students are performing at in the month of winter, and this is where we expect them to be by the springtime. So we're not being reactive. We're kind of aware of where our children are out throughout the year, and provides good conversations for our classroom teachers to our literacy specialists. I'm going to talk about this year's goals for the New York State ELA exam. Before I talk about this year's goals, I want to just briefly look back on last year and debrief with you about that. First off, we all know that the opt-out movement across the state of New York has gotten pretty significant. Over 200,000 students opted out last year. There's a number of other things happening at the state level that I think people are starting to recognize that this is becoming a more significant issue. With that in mind, the overall participation rate at Salzburg Elementary School in the area of ELA, we had about 74% participation. Grade 3, we had 89% participation. Grade 4, 73%. Grade 5, 59%. So a couple of trends you notice that the older students tended to opt out more than the younger students. Being at the street level, my understanding was the number of parents in grade 3 was the first year taking a state assessment. So I think the parents wanted to see how it was going to go for their children. I'm not saying that's the reason why the participation rate was higher at that level, but that's a conversation we have with some of our parents. What you'll see in a little while is the participation rate decreased even more when the math assessment was taken. I think at that point it was 2 weeks out after the ELA exam, the opt-out movement was growing last year. So we lost more children from the math than we did from the ELA. And again, I'll show you those numbers in a moment. So now we take a look at last year's goals for the 2014-2015 year. Last year's fourth grade students, we were hoping they would get to a level of 61% proficiency. Unfortunately, we fell short of that goal. We were at 47.37%. Please keep in mind the context of last year. We had a number of students refusing to take that exam. So what we did was we went a little deeper, and we took a look at the students who took the exam last year, and we also made sure that those same students had taken the assessment the previous year. So when they were in third grade, we just looked at the third graders who also take the test in fourth grade, and that particular group of students actually improved from 43% to 46%, so we're trying to find a silver lining in this. So again, of the fourth graders last year who took the assessment, we went back and made sure we looked at the kids in third grade who took the ELA assessment, who also took it in fourth grade. And we went from 43 to 46%, so that was exciting. Same thing with our outgoing fifth graders. We actually met our goal. We were hoping to get to 46% proficiency. We hit it at 54.17 within the context that a number of students didn't participate. But again, tracking them from fourth grade to fifth grade, the kids that took it 2 years in a row, we moved from 50 to 54%. So again, exciting, happy. This year, we're looking to make growth. Our incoming fourth graders, they left third grade at 22% proficiency rate, so we're certainly hoping to take that up to 32% or more. For fifth grade, our incoming fourth graders left fourth grade at 47% proficiency, and we'd like to lift them to 61%. I think I used the same image last year, if you'll forgive me, but I think it captures the essence of what we're trying to say. We are certainly not the department of pure speculation. At Salzburg or any of the elementary schools, we spend a lot of time looking at data. And, pretty much in July and August, if you came by to Salzburg Elementary School, I'd have a cup of iced coffee on my desk, and I'd probably be on the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center site picking up data sets. And they give us a lot of good information. And we noticed that we struggled in a couple of areas. The red is not in here, but what I will share with you is that these particular priority areas for fourth grade and for fifth grade, all of these areas here, we were 10% or more lower than the RCSD sister schools or regional proficiency levels. So we know these are areas we have to work on in fourth and fifth grade this year. The last goal under developing literate students is to advance students' to advance individual students to their identified NWEA and ELA goal ranges. Now, you might remember last year that we only had 2 goals under literacy. We wanted to add a 3rd goal because we're a little concerned about the opt-out situation and losing students who are not taking the state assessments. So we want to have an added feature to measure our students against. So the NWA is an assessment that the students generally take in the fall. We'll probably have them take it in the wintertime, and they will take it again in the springtime, and that's teachers' local scores. And that gives us, again, a lot of information. One of the things we will do is there's a tool within NWA, it's called a learning continuum, and that gives us an idea of how students are doing with particular standards in literacy. So we can basically take a look at the students' fall scores this year and a particular standard, and we know if a student is not ready to learn that standard, is ready to learn that standard, or is already past that standard and could receive enrichment. So we will use that information to differentiate for our students at Sloatsburg. Now we're moving into developing critical thinkers, and we're talking more about mathematics. For our first goal is we want to take our K-5 cohorts and push them to achieve grade level goals in the Rambo Common Assessments. These are given at different points in the school year, and again, very much like when we spoke about the DRA scores in literacy, we did take a look at last year's results. We spoke with our teachers, we've looked at trends, and these are the goals we've established for this year. We haven't taken our kindergarten baseline yet, but we're taking that quite soon. And again, we're hoping to move our first grade from 85% to 90% proficiency and so forth, as the graph shows. Looking back on last year, I spoke a little bit earlier that we had a drop on our participation rate. Overall, if you remember a moment ago, ELA, we had 74% participation across the building. For mathematics, a couple weeks later last year, we had 69% participation rate. So significant. Looking at these 2 goals we set for ourselves last year, unfortunately we did not hit those goals. We were hoping that our 4th graders last year would get to a 75% proficiency level. They got to a 60% proficiency level. When we tracked those students who took both years, from 3rd grade into 4th grade, we did see an improvement with that group. We took it 2 years in a row, so that was exciting. Again, we're trying to find positive storylines, and that was from 50 to 54%, so that was good growth on students who took the test 2 years in a row. For our outgoing 5th graders, they were at 60% proficiency, and they did drop a little bit from 70 to 60%, so we weren't excited about that, but it's good information to have. When we look at this year, we're hoping to take our 4th grade students from 58% proficiency to 68% proficiency, and we're looking to take our 5th graders from 60 to 69% proficiency. And we did the same thing for mathematics that we did for literacy. We culled the data from the LYRIC, the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, and we took a look at standards that jumped out at us that were either 5% or 10% lower than the region in our sister schools. And the last portion, I'm going to move on. The last portion of this evening, our Priorities to Foster School program that's predicated upon sustainability, student engagement, family community engagement, while promoting a safe and nurturing school environment. The numbers got a little jumbled here when we pulled up the PowerPoint, but my first year coming into Sloatsburg Elementary School, we delivered what was called a perceptual survey. It's called an ASCD, School Improvement Tool. And that is me asking the faculty, hey, how do you feel about these different categories at Sloatsburg Elementary School? And I'm happy to report from the baseline year when I first got to Sloatsburg compared to last spring, we actually had positive growth in all areas, as the numbers signify. Interestingly enough, though, the 3 areas that still need improvement are the original 3 areas that our staff felt we needed to work on. And those areas include sustainability, student engagement, and family and community engagement. So I will talk about how we're trying to address those particular areas at the building level. When we talk about sustainability, we're talking about the climate and culture of the building, what students feel when they walk into a school, how do they feel about themselves, how do they feel about being in the building. So there's a number of approaches and techniques we use at Sloatsburg Elementary School. We have bus ambassadors, we have the character club, we have a green team, we have the Sloatsburg Scoop, and these are different ways to get kids excited about coming to school. We also try to do things that are probably more qualitatively measured, like provide them with a warm welcome. We learn their names, we know their unique learning styles. We express our care and concern for them, and part of our mission is believing in them. We also have classroom jobs. One thing we looked at last year was measuring was when we talk about building student belongingness, is their ability to come to school on a daily basis. Unfortunately, when we look at 2014 to 2015, we dropped a pinch. We went from 95.74 attendance rate to 95.3. We are taking a look at our chronic absenteeism. We're talking about a small handful of families. What I will say to you is that when we're noticing trends with attendance, by the time we've gotten to the 8th or 9th absence or lateness to school, I will first reach out to a family. I'll give them a phone call, let them know we're noticing this trend, and then we'll send a letter home. So it's a phone call so we can have a conversation, but then it's a letter, and if we think the family needs more support, maybe we'll hook them up with our school social worker to provide them family resources, but we're watching that closely. We're not talking about a large number of students, but it did drop last year. We're hoping it's going to jump up this year when we talk about attendance. Pardon me for the pictures here, they came out a little dark. Another piece of building school sustainability and developing a climate and culture where children want to learn is the ability to engage students who are at school with us. And last year, the faculty and I invested a lot of time in talking about what we call learning targets. Learning targets are taking the Common Core objectives and creating them and making them student-friendly language so kids understand what they're learning. I'd like to share a little exercise with you. But before I do that, I will say that we've seen an increase in faculty's use of learning targets. I've conducted 3 or 4 learning walks this year. I think I'm up to 15 or 16 observations. I'm trying to keep up with Mrs. DePercio, who's a rock star with observations, so I'm walking in her footsteps. But what I can say to you, and I've shared this with Dr. Adams and Mrs. Weber and Mr. Steiber, is that we're seeing learning targets come up more often in instruction, which is exciting to me. And it's something we spoke about, and I think the teachers are starting to buy in and seeing the special effects of that. If you take a look at this comic strip, it kind of captures what happens sometimes, not in Suffern, of course, but when you walk into a classroom, you have these kids sitting up there, please, Mrs. Sweeney, may I ask you where you're going with all of this? And that's the point of having a learning target, is trying to help the kids understand where we're headed for the day or for the unit. We do this little exercise with our faculty, and if you want to indulge me in this word a bit, see if you could find the star, the 5-pointed star in this picture. It's probably really difficult now, the picture's a little dark. But what if I said to you, let's try to find it now? How about? You found it? How about now? You got it? If students don't know where they're headed and we don't help them get there, they're flailing. So the use of a learning target, it gives students direction, it captures them, they know where they're headed for 40, 50, 60, 65 minutes. If they don't know where they're headed for 65 minutes, they're all over the place in the lesson. So again, the points of learning targets is to drive students towards a goal. The last piece of building sustainability is making sure that our students know we're very proud of them. We have school-wide announcements in the mornings on the PA system. We share students' birthdays. We were certainly excited about the cross-country races. All 5 schools had great participation over the weekend, and we ran together as a team, and that was a very enjoyable weekend. We give out great news postcards to our kids when they're doing a great job. We make it a point at faculty meetings to fill out postcards and share them with families. And we also today just acknowledged 51 Students of the Month for the September and October. These are children who have consistently demonstrated great behavior such as respect and tolerance. Last year, about 72% of our students received Students of the Month, and we're certainly looking to up that this year. Priority 3, goal number 2, promote family and community engagement through partnerships with the SES PTA in the Village of Sloatsburg. On the left, you have a number of assemblies that our PTA is working with the faculty and staff of Sloatsburg Elementary School to bring to our building. What I'm excited to say is that our chair, Julie Absali, is engaging teachers in conversations, and she's asking, these are some assemblies we can bring to the building. Will they draw curricular connections to the work you're doing with kids? And our teachers have an opportunity to talk with the PTA and say, hey, you know what, gee whiz, we really like this one didn't work as well, this one connected to that, and there's a conversation now between the PTA and between our teachers is what we're going for. The other piece is we're famous friends with the Village Hall in Sloatsburg. We do a number of things together. We have poster painting contests, we have the pumpkin decorating and Halloween parade, we have the 4th grade village tour in history, and you know, I think I see one of our board members right there, up in the upper right-hand corner. Mr. Long up there. And then we like to have things like curriculum nights and art nights. So What we didn't do last year, what we'll look to do this year, and I'll bring this information back to you, I was a little late on this last year, we're gonna look to take attendance for our parent-teacher conferences and family nights and bring that back to you guys next year. I'll let you know how we're doing with that, and we'll make that a baseline in future years for the CSIC. The last piece is, and I've got to give Jen Citrello a lot of credit here. If you go up on the Salzburg website, we're trying to digitally brand ourselves on the Twitter feeds. So we have our logo up on there, and when a special event happens, when we have maybe Officer Oli on, or Dare Officer Magaletta visit us, or maybe Mayor Wright, or maybe something really cool is going on in Mrs. Vegas class where kids are using local restaurant menus to learn about place value. When we see great things happening in the classrooms in our building, we'll send it out to families to let them know what's happening in the building. And this is just another way to brand ourselves and share our story with the community of suffering in Salzburg. Ultimately, though, we are working to inspire students to believe in themselves and reaching their highest potential. That is our school mission, and we believe that if we work towards that mission, we can develop literate critical thinkers who possess creativity, character, and that's what it's all about at Salzburg Elementary School. The last portion is we want to foster student awareness and practice character pillars. So let's be honest, things happen in all of our schools. We do have issues of teasing and harassment and bullying. What we live to do each month, though, is we'll hold what we call character rallies at our school. We'll talk about concepts like respect, responsibility, caring, fairness, trustworthiness, and it's an opportunity for me to join the students and have these conversations with them with each grade level. It's an intimate setting, and it's just a fun time for us to talk about these things. Typically, when I receive a phone call that a child maybe is being bullying, or a student comes to me, I maintain a discipline log on my desk. It's a black and white marble notebook. I'll just take notes, and when I'm speaking to a parent, we'll typically interview the children. We'll get an idea of what's happening, and we'll mediate with the children. And in certain cases, we have to consequence students. But I want to say that our belief at Salzburg Elementary School is that consequences have to come up through mediation. Only through those two pieces can we fully help remediate a child who's struggling. Lastly, we have some innovations this year that we're working on at Salzburg Elementary School. We are working on what's called Salzburg Snapshots in ELA and Math. The real concept is that a teacher will look at an upcoming unit, they'll identify the key standards, we'll work with our literacy specialists, our IF, our math specialist. We'll develop little mini assessments that teachers want us to use to see how our students are doing throughout the year, just giving us more lead measures throughout the year. Coach Wojciechowski, I think you've heard of him before. He's in the Lowell paper today again. Does a great job for us. He brings great passion and energy to the school. And he's currently working on a unit with Mrs. Edwards called Farmville. It's going to be a 2-week unit for grades K through 5, in which the entire gym will be converted into a fully functioning farm. And we're looking to promote the concept of community, cooperation, and economy to our students. I want to thank the business office. They've helped us purchase a number of these items, and we will share this concept with our sister schools so other phys ed teachers can use this in their schools. So we will bring this to the district and certainly to Salzburg. Lastly, we're looking to bring what's called Makerspace to Salzburg Elementary School. I don't want to steal Principal Aguilar's thunder, because I'm sure she'll be talking about this as well, but we're looking to partner between Shirley and Salzburg and play around with this concept of Makerspace. But to get to the bottom of it, it's really about the engineering design processes. Students take a look at a problem, they come up with solutions, they try their solutions out, they debrief on the solutions. And I think at Salzburg Elementary School, Makerspace has a lot of sense in finding detailed, granular ways to support the community of Salzburg, little details that we might be able to help out with. So we're still in the exploratory phases, but we do believe we'll get it up off the ground by the end of the school year. And that concludes our CSIP for now. Can I answer any questions from the board or
It
central
was
office?
excellent report, detailed. And if I could just say, I like the way you compared your last year's with this year's data.
Thank you very much.
It's important. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Marley's.
I just have a comment, which is, thank you very much for the presentation. And I really like the piece about how when a child is absent for a prolonged period of time, you pick up the phone and you engage in a conversation with the parents, because you never know what's happening in that kid's life. And I think that connection between the school and the home is so important. So thank you for doing that.
I also want to compliment your theory of consequences only after remediation, because of the same reasons. Our purpose is to prevent this behavior from continuing and to help the child find out what was wrong with that behavior and how to do better, rather than just punishment. So thank you for that. And again, complimenting your presentation. It's very thorough and very informative. Just the one figure that showed a decline from previous year in math, what do you attribute it to? What's your conclusions and plan of action?
When we took a look at some, there's a couple particular standards that we identified from the lyric that I think are continuing to come up again, so that's something that we're working on with Mrs. Frank and our fifth grade math instructors, Mrs. Baker and Mrs. Miller, for this year. You know, to be honest with you, I'd imagine it's hard for me to give you a real feeling of trend because I've only been there for a year. So if I could maybe have a couple more months to get back to you on that.
It's actually hard to believe that this is your second SIP already. It feels like yesterday we met you. So great work in such a short time, I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Just, you know, because I saw a 10% decline, it was
Yeah.
like kind of a red flag, but I know
Yeah.
you're looking at it closely.
One thing, Dr. Kahan, that I might add is that when you look at a drop from 70 to 60% at Sloatsburg Elementary School, and I'm not trying to make excuses here, but I will say that because the class sizes are so small, if we have 2 or 3 students drop, that could easily anywhere from 5 to 15%. So I would note that,
Thank you.
of course.
Thank you. Ms. Danzig?
You had some pretty incredible numbers in your first and second grade in both math and ELA, and then you had that big drop off, down to third. But what are we doing right in that kindergarten, first and second grade that's given us those numbers?
I think we have a number of things going on. I think our literacy specialists and our classroom teachers are talking a lot to each other, and the same thing's happening in 3rd to 5th grade. But what I would say is, I think the key difference is that when you're in K-2, you're learning to read. It can sometimes be a little bit easier than reading to learn when you're in grades 3, 4, and 5. And the accessing text in grades 3, 4, and 5 is much more difficult and much more rigorous. So I think the success unfortunately tapers off when you get a little bit older. And we certainly saw that when I was at North Rockland Middle School as well. So I think that's probably the effects you're seeing there.
Excellent, thank you. Anything else? No, very good, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
I obviously am going to talk about Connor's comprehensive school-wide improvement plan. As you can see up there, we received 2 accolades, one for high performance. And what that really means is that we made adequate yearly progress and we closed the gap between subgroups from the 2012-13 school years and 2013-14 school year. We also received acknowledgement for being a high progress reward school, and that was not only because we made adequate yearly progress, we closed the gap, but because our combined unweighted ELA and math scores for all students placed us in the top 10% in terms of gains made between those 2 years, between the 12-13 and the 13-14 school years. And of course, that's because of the teachers at Connor School, as I said to them initially when I received this news. This would not be possible without you. So since a few of them are here this evening, I wanted to acknowledge that again. As an overview, slides 3 through 8 are going to talk about who we are. Slides 9 through 14 are going to talk about where we are academically, with slide 9 comparing us to the district and the region. Slides 7 through 11 will compare us to ourselves. And then slides 15 and beyond are going to talk about where we're going academically and affectively. So first, who we are. I always call Connor, since I arrived there, my little UN, because I always felt that way when I'm there. But in essence, what you're going to see on this slide is the percentage of students that we have at different ethnic groups. What was noticeable to me is that when I looked at our Hispanic population over the last 5 years, and focused, excuse me, in on grades 3 through 5 particularly, we've been as low as 12% in the 11-12 school year to a high of 36.8% in the 13-14 year. This year, just looking at those last 3 grades, we're roughly at 33.7%. But our white population, if you will, I always hated that word, but anyway, that includes not only children who have been here for a few years and families who have been here, the Irish, the Italian families. It also includes some Polish children, Ukrainian children, and other children who are English language learners also. So it's not just a Hispanic ENL or Asian ENL or anything along those lines. But with the understanding that it is our little UN, we have been celebrating our diversity for a few years now. At our last diversity night, which was in April of 2015, we had 13 different countries represented. It truly is a fun event. I always tell people, come hungry, because there is a lot of food. And if you eat, you're just going to ruin the entire experience before then. You cannot have dinner and come here. You have to come here hungry. But what you're going to see on the next 4 slides are different groups who presented for us. And this, I must tell you, is done entirely by parents. The only thing I do is coordinate who's going to go where in the gym or in the cafeteria and how many tables they need, and I make sure they have the equipment. After that, it's all in their hands. These came out dark. Sorry. They were lighter on my pictures. But this is Spain, and there's lots of different food here. This is Lithuania's, what's it called? It's called the Yellow Crosses. And the students were drawing that evening their crosses. There's a story and a song that went with it that evening. And this came out the best. This is one of our Chinese families showing children how to write their name in Chinese. So it's really a fun evening. It usually lasts a little over an hour, but it's well worth it. In addition, roughly 36% of our student population is on free or reduced lunch, with quite honestly the majority of those being free. And even though our population of ENL as a building is only 11%, I thought it was important to point out where we are at different grade levels. So that's pretty much what this slide will show you. Our highest is currently first grade, and they have roughly 22.5% of the population are English language learners and children who are learning English as a new language. It is as low as 1.3% in 5th grade. What you're going to see in that third column over transitioning ENL are the number of students who, as a result of the NICES lab, are no longer considered English language learners. But quite honestly, they still struggle understanding academic English. They may be able to have a conversation on the playground with their classmates or whomever, but when it comes to, as I was saying to someone else earlier, when it comes to understanding the concept of photosynthesis, then you're talking more like 7 to 10 years, some people will argue. But anyway, those children who are transitioning are no longer considered English as a new language child. The next slide here talks about our scale scores. And although we're never perfect, we certainly strive to be and certainly strive to improve. Just for those who aren't real familiar with scale scores, they are scores that have been mathematically transformed from one set of raw numbers to another so that they can be comparable in some way. And so what you're going to notice, if I, there it is, Connor scores going across. Our third grade ELA score was wonderful. As you can see there, the mean score of 327 was the highest in the area. I'm really thrilled with that. It's the best we've done since I've been there. Our math for the last few years has always been strong. So you're going to see that going through again. Our ELA score, 307, matched South Orangetown and Nyack. Still a little bit lower than I certainly would like it. Our math 4 score, skill score, was the highest once again in the area. Our 5th grade literacy matched the districts. A little bit lower than other areas, but our 5th grade math was extremely strong. Whoops. The next thing I wanted to point out, the areas that you see in green, are some of the areas that I think are noteworthy, even though it appears to be a small percentage. For example, in 3rd grade ELA, although we had 22 fewer students take it in the spring of 2015, we had 5 more students receive a 4. As a matter of fact, it was the most 4s we had in the last 5 years. With ELA in 4th grade, although we had 55 4th graders take this test in the spring of 2015, instead of 80 who took it the year before, we only had 2 less students receive a 3, which I thought was exciting. And lastly, in 5th grade ELA, and I point out the ELAs because those are the areas that we struggle with the most. But in 5th grade ELA, although 5 less took it in the spring of 2015 than in the spring of 2014, we had 4 more students receive a score of 4 than we had before. So all reasons to celebrate. What this slide shows is the last 3 years of ELA at Connor. In the years you're going to see the blue for grade 3, the orange for grade 4, and 5th grade, that grayish color. What you'll notice here, I think that at least jumps out of the page at me, is our 3rd grade ELA scores have consistently gone up over the last 3 years. People have asked me if I think Journeys has anything to do with that. The honest answer is I don't know for sure. I would love to tell you it did, but I don't really know for sure. Hopefully I'll have a better handle on that answer later. I do know that the students who are 3rd graders this year will have had Journeys since 1st grade. But other things to notice on this page is that our score from 33, for 5th grade in 13-14, we went from 33.8 to 37.9. And in the 14-15 school year, the year preceding, those 4th graders were at a 34.2, and as 5th graders last year, they were at a 37.5. And once again, there were a lot less students who took it. When I look at the last 3 years at math, we had initially in 2012-13, we tended to be around the 57 percentile of students with 3s or 4s. Last year, we did a bit better than, well, 2 years ago, I should say, we did a little bit better than last, with 80% in grade 3, 89% in grade 5. Last year, the 14-15 school year, we pretty much focused around 76% of our students at all grade levels demonstrating proficiency. When I look at the charts, just to show the same cohort, sometimes it's a little deceiving, but this same cohort of students, once again, what jumps out is that 3rd grade is definitely on the right track going up. Our 4th grade has also improved, though, as you'll notice, from a 35% in the 1 year, the 15 year, that class of 15 was now in the middle school, to last group's fourth graders, 38.11 to 38.8. Math, the growth is a lot bigger, if you will, especially the class that is now in the middle school. That cohort as third graders were at a 57th percentile, and by the time we were done with them as fifth graders, they were at a 75.5% percentage of success rate. Our class of 2016, the class that will be fifth graders this year, with the number of students that refuse, that percentage is pretty much the same. So as a result of all of this, we have two priorities in literacy. One is to improve our meaning of general academic and domain-specific words or phrases, and the second to be able to refer back to a text to locate information. What this chart shows you is where we currently are. So for example, kindergarten students, there were 10 students who were unable to receive any score in word analysis. They had difficulty identifying a straight line down with a circle on one side or the other side, what we call that. Whereas we had one child who was reading at a DRA of 3, another at a 4, and a third at a 10, which is a nice DRA score in kindergarten. But our goal for kindergarten is that 80% of the students will be at benchmark DRA of 3 by the end of the year. So I'm pretty confident we will reach that. What you'll see then down here is where we currently are in the various other grades with students at a DRA benchmark, and the benchmark listed there. Mr. Lloyd, Dr. eventually here, but currently still Mr. Lloyd, showed you the chart that had those DRA scores. This is pretty much where they are, should be at benchmark. What we do, or what we're working on to have students get there is, as you know, we have our Journeys program. Children and teachers in grades 3 through 5 work on expeditionary learning. We look at Wordly Wise to help us with our vocabulary. When I looked at, although it's not noted here, vocabulary, as I said before, is a struggle. Only 23% of our second graders, according to the NWEA, were below where they should be. According to the NWEA, 29% of our third graders struggle with vocabulary. 32% of our fourth graders struggle, and 24% of our fifth graders struggle with vocabulary. So we will assess that again at the end of the year with the NWEA, but we are using various vocabulary strategies from software programs to Wordly Wise to help with those issues. AIS services, this picture shows with students in 4th and 5th grade. We provide AIS services to students, really K-5. Kindergarten is a push-in until December, January. But 1st grade through 5th grade is both pull out and push-in. Our second priority, math, is to be able to fluently answer addition and subtraction, fluently represents and solve problem solving with multiplication and division in grade 3, and improve numeracy utilizing the 4 operations with whole numbers, fractions, and decimals in the upper 2 grades. Once again, this chart shows you where we currently are. So you'll see, for example, of our 66 kindergarten students, there were 30 problems on their test. The good news is that 43 of those children were unable to answer any correctly. So as I said to the teachers, look how well they're going to do at the end of the year. 21 children were able to answer anywhere between 2 and 17 of those 30 questions. one child was able to answer 19 and one child 26. When a child of 26 teaching, I'm kidding. But what you'll see here then is our benchmark where we're starting off. What you're going to see in the second column is where we will be by the end of the year. We use a lot of Engage New York modules. In kindergarten, we use investigations. We use Encore Math. Compass Learning, we have students on IXL, on Reflex. The strategy you're going to see here, especially in this second picture, the line bar is what we use a lot to help students solve math problems. In essence, I don't know if you can really see that, but the question is, Sally collected 423 pieces of whatever. She has 287. Now, how many more will she need to collect? So students know that they jump to friendly numbers, and then they add their way up. Thanks to the PTA, we were able to do a Google slide, that I'd like to show you now. It's combinations of 10.
Once we learn the combinations of 10, we'll use them over and over again. Once we learn the combinations of 10, we'll use them over and over again. Number 9, Sherlock Five, have a good time with 10. 0 plus 10, 1 plus 9.
I think jumping is to keep your attention. Makes me want to take Dramamine, but that's beside the point.
4 plus 6, 5 plus 5, leave 10 alive. 6 plus 4, 7 plus 3, 8 plus 2, and 9 plus
reduce incidents of physical aggression and verbal aggression. On the next slide, you'll see where we were over the last couple of years and where our goal then puts us this year. We've gone down in all 3 areas, as you'll see here. Unfortunately, not enough. I'd love to say there will be no incidents of bullying. I know that's not possible, so my goal right now is to go from 7 incidents, which we had at the end of last year, to 4. I would like us to drop from 16 incidents of physical aggression, where somebody is hit or punched or whatever, to no more than 10. even though that sounds high, it's my goal. And then lastly, with verbal aggression, to reduce the number of 8 incidents that we had at the end of last year to 5 incidents. Be surprised at how many children accidentally hit or accidentally say words. I wish accidents like that really existed, but as I say to kids, I don't think that's called an accident. Anyway, the last, it's really called anger management. And so this last video that you're going to see is one that our social worker uses, the psychologist uses. It's with Angry Birds. There are questions and skits that go with children. It's going to take a minute next.
Those stinky pigs. I hate those pigs. I'm so angry at those pigs. I'm so angry. I could just smash them into vacuum bags. I don't know what to say.
It is fun.
I'm just really angry at them. I don't think of myself as a bigot, but when it comes to pigs, we've always just hated them. Hey, birds! You think you're so awesome. You're nothing. That slingshot's just for show. They think they're so cool, because they can fly, and because they can regulate their body temperature without soaking in mud. But really, they're just omelets with wings. You know what I'm saying? Hey, we're not gonna let you talk to us that way. Pigs, prepare to feel my wrath. Yeah, bring it on. You're gonna regret messing with this one seriously angry bird. Where is he? What's going on? I thought I was angry. But when I saw that helpless little blind piggy, all that anger just flew away. I guess I just realized that I don't have to be angry. That it's actually a choice. Pretty deep for a brain the size of a jelly bean, huh? What happened? Where's that angry bird? Oh, he flew the coop. Here, let me help you down before those nasty birds come back. And the rest is history. Birds and pigs put their anger aside and lived in harmony, working together to build complex machines for flying pigs to get around easier.
And last but not least, I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Very good, thank you. Excellent, excellent. Questions? Oh, Dr. Oh. Questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for doing the student growth charts.
You're very welcome. I don't know if you
It's a song
think
and
you
dance
guys
now, you ready?
Great dance.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
That was great. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I said thank you for showing the student growth chart. I like to see how the students go year by year. We tend to compare third grade. We'd like to
It
see
was
how they.
important for me to see the color.
Absolutely. Before we got there, I was actually drawing lines.
Yes.
To read the other ones to see how they're doing. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Anybody else?
I also want to compliment the diagrams. They make it a lot easier to visualize the differences and your numbers in comparison with other schools in the county and for our district are really impressive. Congratulations and all your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With Mary and with all the principals, the process that they go through is that they actually have a written plan. I think Mary's is the longest, it's somewhere around 100, 150 pages. But she has all the data in there in a lot of detail. She has her needs assessment in there, as do all the principals. But a committee sits down with each of the principals and goes through all of this, and then they develop a presentation from the data. Sometimes we don't emphasize points where the buildings did really well. But if you take a look at the chart, there was that one chart that Mary emphasized. She called it green from my angle, kind of looked like fluorescent yellow, but where she talked about the number of kids in a 3 or a number of kids in a 4, she only looked at ELA. But at the other end of the spectrum, when you actually drill down and look at her data, there's fewer kids at level 1. They're over into level 2, and they're moving into level 3. And that's a profound impact on the children. So yes, we look at the upper end, but we also look at the lower end so that we can pull them along. And as Mary pointed out, the AIS services are really top-notch at Connor as in all of the schools. And then her first slide, which she talked about, and which I had shared with the board on September 1st, is a certificate for being a reward school. Celebration of New York State schools that have made the most progress or have the highest achievement in the state with no significant gaps in student achievement. Your school has earned recognition as a reward school for the 15-16 school year. Richard P. Connor Elementary School in leading New York State toward the accomplishment of educational excellence through an increase in student achievement, closing the gap in student performance. And in that year, her outgoing 5th graders, they achieved 89.8%, I believe, proficiency in math, which is really outstanding. And so, Mary, on behalf of the Commissioner of Education from New York State, and on behalf of the board, I want to award you the certificate. If you just slide around, so there's still a few of your staff here.
This is really for the teachers at Connor, so thank you very much.
Student transportation, similar report I've done the last couple of years. So, you might be surprised to know that the transport, and Dr. Holmes stole my thunder, transport to 107 schools. That's down from last year. Last year we were 108. We lost 15 schools, we added 14. So down 1 school. Out of those 107, obviously 7 are our public schools. We have 29 special education schools and 71 non-public schools. Last year we transported 4,992. This year we're up to 5,140. That's an increase of 148 students. Obviously more than the non-public. We still have some pending non-public schools listed above, as you can see. So that non-public number may rise with the approval of tonight of the board requiring them to provide a certificate of occupancy and a fire inspection. We started some pending schools with 9 pending non-public schools right now. You'll notice the last school you should visit. One school has 5 locations. So some challenges we have with that updating not only the certificate of occupancy, but as well as the valid fire inspection. So that number will likely increase. Here's a historical analysis compared to the 11-12 school year. Actually pretty consistent. Obviously public schools are the same. Special education schools, again, they kind of fall off and add as the years go by. Again, actually exactly the same as 11-12. Again, an increase from 59 non-public schools to 71 for this year. Additional 12 schools, that's about a 20% increase from the 11 school year. And keep in mind that's still with 9 pending schools. Last year, we made it to Denver in terms of traveling in 1 day. That's decreased a little bit. We broke the border in Colorado this year. So it's just a slight decrease in miles per day. But keep in mind that our buses travel a significant amount of times on a daily basis. Again, in terms of around per year, we were down a little bit from last year, still making about 27 times on a daily basis. In terms of expenses, our contractual requirement is based on the consumer price index for our vendor Chestnut Ridge. That was 0 this year, so we had no increase in terms of expenses. However, there was about a 6% increase because we had to add additional buses due to the increase in the school change in students. Last year, we were at about we had about a $6 increase per student from last year, and about a 72-cent increase per mile from last year. Again, so a slight increase, again, no increase per bus in our contract based on CPI, but it obviously an increase when adding buses to our fleet. That's it. Any questions?
Any questions? Just the 71 schools are non-special ed schools.
And yet we're required to transport within 15 miles for non-public schools, and 50 miles for special ed schools.
So the 71 schools are within 15 miles of Rapid Central.
There's much more than 70, yes. A lot of them to the east, there's a lot of schools to the east, but again, New Jersey's very close as well, so there's a lot of schools that are close.
Right, that would include New Jersey.
Correct.
Right.
Kelly, how do we verify the kids that are at those schools? You know, how do we know that the school gets 10 kids, and, how do we get the list? Do we ever verify that there are kids getting on those dresses and going to those schools?
Every year, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to be submitted by April 1st. You have to submit a request for transportation every non-public school student.
The parents submit it,
Yes.
and then do we track and say, okay, yeah, this kid has been on the bus? I mean,
For the most part, the drivers will let us know. When
Yeah,
the
but-
student's not in, and if they call up and say, oh, you're not getting on the bus, I'll call. And they do move. There's a lot of shifting that goes on.
And bus drivers has to know this. Too many are really too few of us. Any questions?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe that's all the reports the information manager did. Lee has left the building. We have no discussion items set for today due to the time frame. I don't have any on the agenda for this meeting. I don't, because of the time.
They never get on the agenda, so I'm gonna just request these for future discussion, they're important.
Was it on your email?
They're on email?
I did respond to the email, just.
Okay, so I'll
You
be
wanted to
really
send me
fast.
another
In the interest
email, or
of
you
time,
want-
I'll be very quick, I don't have a response to this email, but,
I'll forward it again to you.
okay. So I've requested, in past meetings, some for the last few meetings, some for several months now, a report regarding the funding for, Richard P. Connors Family Resource Center, as well as other centers pending funding shortage in future years, and to assure no interruption in the great services these centers are providing. I'd like to have a
Did we
discussion
spoke
on
about
that.
that? Okay.
Thank you. And the other one is, as requested, the Board of Education also has an opportunity to review our own budget, not the full budget from last year, 14-15. I disagree with waiting till January for budget season to have access to these numbers, because budget season is a very busy time, loaded with other items that we need to look at and a lot of, presentations. So I think we are entitled to looking at our
I do
own
that,
budget.
we did talk about that, that's also on the quarterly report, but.
I'm sorry, I just want to go through this really quickly.
Sure.
The talk was we should wait till January. I'm requesting this before January. I'm requesting this as soon as possible.
It's on tonight's quarterly, actually.
I'm sorry?
It's on the quarterly reports, the financial quarterly reports.
Right, just not the whole detail.
Yeah, the detail of it is on.
Next item is the superintendent to please report on turf. I know you mentioned upstairs, there's a report coming. I did not
Is
know
there-
that until we were upstairs. Ever since the brief report on July 10th, I've repeatedly requested a report on Suffolk Middle School's existing turf fields and the plans for a community forum that we were promised would happen in the fall, which I don't foresee happening in the fall, in order to share with the community all details regarding what our plans will be and what we're considering. I personally don't know what we're considering as a replacement of these fields. The last item I've asked to add is a discussion about the National School Board Association Conference. The conference is early registration deadline is somewhere in January. According to the National School Board Association, we already have 3 members of our board registered for the conference. I don't recall a vote taken for either a cap for how much we're spending for this conference, or how many people we're sending, or who they are, or how many nights they're spending in a hotel. I don't recall a vote. We have requested a vote. And policy 2521 has been waived in the past, holding all registrations until we vote as a board. 3 members should not be registered for this convention without the vote we've been requested to take in the past. Thank you.
Okay, and I did respond to the email addressing those issues.
I do.
I don't have a response regarding National School Board
No,
or
I'll
this.
forward it to you.
Sure, until
Yeah,
on my
no,
way to the meeting.
That's all right, I'll forward it to you.
Thank
No, it was probably last week, but,
I don't have.
Marlene?
I did also send out agenda requests. One of them was to discuss the new Board of Regents. I attended a meeting where the Regent Johnson gave a speech, and she had talked about how the Board of Regents is reevaluating the Common Core curriculum standards. And requested that we talk about that, and was told that that will happen in the future, but there's an important piece of information that is already posted on the website. However, there is a deadline for this. So there's a survey that because I know Terry even mentioned that we got the focus for ADPR. It is also to reevaluate ADPR, but also to reevaluate the Common Core standards.
Oh, absolutely.
And so teachers and parents can go to this survey, take the survey for what's appropriate for their child's grade or what they're teaching, because it's a very long survey, but it has to be done before November 1st. That's when they're compiling the data, and I called the Board of Regents and spoke to them about this. That's when they're compiling their data, and that's when they're going to start to look at things. But that survey needs to be done before, not November 1st, sorry, before the end of November. So wanted to make sure that's clarified.
Okay, now we have public participation. Public participation as to any school district business. At this time, the chair will open up the meeting for public participation. This portion of the meeting will last no longer than 30 minutes. If you would like to speak, please approach the podium, state your name, address, school affiliation. If you're represented by a group or organization, please appoint a single spokesperson for said group. You have 3 minutes to speak. The podium is to my left. Please address your remarks to the president of the board. And again, although this is not a question and answer, we are listening. Again, if you could leave some contact information, whether it's an email address or if you don't have an email, a street address, you can leave it with Angela, the court clerk, sorry. The district clerk, so we can provide for an appropriate response. And again, I don't want to cut anybody off during the public participation. It is getting a late hour, and I think people are wanting to see the results of certain elections in this area. I just remind you that policies 1230, 1400, 3240 refrain from discussing individual district personnel or students. And I think I'll end it there. Okay, I know, it might be.
My name is Faith Brown. I'm a Montebello resident, parent of 3 children. My oldest is in 1st grade at Montebello Elementary School, and I'm also a teacher at Suffolk Middle School. I would have to say that probably most people here who I work with know me as a world language teacher. Most of my day is as a world language teacher, but I'm also TESOL certified, and so for K-12, I'm certified to teach English language learners. I've been an ESL or ENL teacher off and on for 15 years. During this time, I have never been offered professional development in the area of ENL, even though I taught it for this many years. And the only time I've been asked to join an ESL department has been to help score the nicest class. The middle school teachers don't meet, and district-wide, I've yet to be asked to any district meeting, although I've heard through these board meetings this year that they exist. The only information I knew about Dr. Marshall is from the book I ordered from Amazon.com. So as a teacher in the district, with 6 different preps, without much more than 4-day school notice, and without direction, I chose not to volunteer to debrief a session today. I felt it was mentioned today, so I needed to speak. speak instead of disseminating a think, pair, share reflection worksheet to my colleagues. My time as a teacher of ELS would be better spent actually participating in the learning process. And it was.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Diamond. I have a daughter currently at Suffern High School, a son who recently graduated from Suffern High School. It's come to my attention that the Board of Education leadership has written to the RTA asking them to refrain from speaking out about district issues during public participation, citing District Policy 3240. Once I got over my initial shock and outrage at this request, I was left with only one thought: what's happened to democratic transparency? Silencing members of the school community because you may not like what you hear is unworthy of public officials in a democratic society. Worse, it denies the public a valuable opportunity for information. Some of those who have silenced are taxpaying members of this district deeply invested in the community. Is this really the model you want to set for young students attending a Board of Education meeting? This act would be disturbing in its own right, but it's made more so by what I see as a continuing pattern of this board leadership. While I may not attend meetings regularly, with the regularity I would like, rest assured I watch the videos as much as I can to stay abreast. And what I see is no less disturbing. I have watched this board leadership deny its own members agenda items or to obfuscate information to prevent uncomfortable discussions. I'm equally disturbed by the pattern of fiscal wastefulness that seems to plague this Board of Education. While the district rightfully calls for fiscal restraint, it allows grievances with the district union to languish, refusing to settle them, yet it will spend thousands of dollars on unnecessary arbitration hearings. It continues to spend needlessly on an outside counsel to negotiate with the RTA, only to declare impasse and then pony up thousands more for a more fruitless mediation process. Yet it seems to be able to find money to continue to give its central administration generous raises well above the rate of inflation. This is not how I want to see my scarce education dollars spent, and this is surely not leadership. I needn't lecture you on the value of fiscal responsibility, openness, and transparency. You hear that plenty from other members of this community. But the fact remains that this board district leadership, rather than addressing unpleasant realities, chooses instead just not to hear them and to keep them from the public. I would ask that going forward, the board and district administration reconsider its policies and practices, be transparent, fiscally responsible, and rather than gag these district teachers, find a way to work with them. Thank you.
Okay, any further public participation?
Hi, I'm Nicole Tarifi. I'm a teacher at the middle school. I teach 8th grade English, but I'm also a taxpayer. I live in Airmont. My son is in 1st grade at Cherry Lane. My husband and I bought at the height of the market. Our tiny little ranch was $475,000. It's public information, and I bet we couldn't even sell it now for $300,000. So we're here. We're in it for the long haul. And so I've come tonight to speak as a taxpayer. 2 weeks ago, instead of choosing to settle a grievance for less than $200, the board and superintendent decided to proceed to arbitration that cost taxpayers such as myself, that could cost taxpayers such as myself in excess of $10,000. It's been claimed that all of the administration is up to date and fully informed regarding grievance matters, but the vote against this reasonable settlement that the RTA proposed has me wondering if that's really the case. So as a taxpayer, I can't imagine that as you all are taxpayers, you wouldn't want to solve these issues as we would want to solve these issues at the lowest level and cost available. So I'm just leaving with this one question. Was everyone aware of the RTA's proposed settlement prior to the vote on October 20th? Thank you for looking into that.
comments regarding our conference day today. After reflecting on some of the discussions that took place during our conference today, which was mostly in regards to our ENL students, I began to think about the recent programs that have been dismantled by this administration and this Board of Education. The Reading Readiness program at the elementary, the Homework Club at Connor, the Homework Club at the middle school, summer school, field trips which provided non-traditional learning for some of our most needy students. These programs were put in place by the previous administration to help some of our most vulnerable and academically deficient populations of students. Valuable time and resources were spent to bring our presenter in today. I would hope that this board would reconsider spending those resources to bring back some of those programs to help address the many issues that were raised by our staff, both this morning and back at our buildings. As our ENL population continues to increase, the resources we are devoting to help these students succeed continues to decrease. I think we're going in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is President. I teach 8th grade science in middle school. And I just wanted to say that I was kind of disturbed that what Mrs. Weber chose to relay to you about today partly was that there were ENL teachers that declined to facilitate. Mrs. Brown spoke to you about, the reasons behind that. And I just wanted to say that I've worked with 3 of them for 16 years now. And you won't find harder working, more caring teachers around. The connections that they make with those kids and those families is tremendous, and we couldn't do it without them. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, this, hold on. I can't forget, because apparently last meeting I did forget.
It's a quick question.
Sorry, no, hold on. Number 7, closing comments of Superintendent of Schools. Dr. Adams. Do you want, yeah, I just wanted to, I know I forgot it last week at the last meeting, I don't want to forget it again. I got reprimanded for it, so, I'm sorry, I'm on it. Yeah, exactly.
I just originally had seen an advocacy committee report that I no longer see online. Or was it removed? Advocacy committee report? It
There
was
was no
there, now
advocacy
it's not there.
No, there was no advocacy.
It was posted originally. Okay.
I didn't see it on the original agenda from
We
last
met.
week, so.
We met.
No, we met.
But I had seen an agenda item as soon as we were reporting because it said so. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see it. It wasn't there last Thursday.
I saw it over the weekend.
Okay, I don't know. There was nothing, but I believe I spoke with Maureen with respect to the timeframe.
Are we going to the report?
Yeah, when the advocacy committee is ready.
Next meeting? we're going to?
I'll ask. Right, exactly. Right. Okay.
I thought we reported after every meeting, but plus it was posted on. I can't prove it now because it's gone.
I know, you know what, I have the original, but, okay, anyway, I'm sorry. Superintendent's comments.
The board in the past has asked about, had asked me to provide some clarifications, and in so doing, I just looked at some things that have been reoccurring comments, either via email or at a board meeting, and so I thought I'd run through these. They are rather lengthy, so won't take any questions, and afterwards we can talk about it or make it a discussion item for the next time. The first issue, opioid antagonists, Narcan. It's It's been stated, so last year when I asked whether the nurses needed to be trained for Narcan in the district, I was told there was no need for it. Well, the context, under the law and regulations that were in existence last year, schools were prohibited from stocking Narcan. It would not be specifically prescribed for a student. And then there's also the potential legal liability of school nurses, because although it protects bystanders, it does not protect medical professionals acting within the scope of their employment. There was a lengthy article in the NISBA publication last November 2014, or about a year ago. So last year, there were certain prohibitions or certain liability that was evident in the law. But the law changed on August 11, 2015, which permitted school districts now to provide the Narcan and to maintain the Narcan at each of the school facilities to be used during emergencies. Also, it will protect registered professional nurses to administer opioid-related overdose treatment pursuant to a non-patient specific order. So the difference between last year and this year is a change in the law. How we've responded in a proactive way, over the summer we had a grant that was available to us, so we had 2 of our nurses trained from the high school and the nurse coordinator was trained. And then the remaining nurses were trained today at the Addiction Treatment Center in Orangeburg. So now we have all of our public school nurses trained. The director of TPS will also be trained, the school resource officer is trained. And now that the nurses have been trained, we now have the kits available at each and every one of the schools. And although some would think that maybe it's perhaps a secondary level, unfortunately, the kit had to be used with an adult visiting a building in one of the elementaries within the last 2 weeks. So it's important that we have these kits available. So we have taken care of the training and also the kits are available. CSE review concerns has come up for probably about a year at various times. The comment that was made is the duty of the Board of Ed required by law to read the IEPs thoroughly and inquire as to anything that is unclear or questionable. So within the context, our district policies regarding students with disabilities were completely updated after 23 years. I know there's been some discussion about the importance of whether something is a standing committee or an ad hoc committee, and one of the points made was the policy committee was a standing committee, and so that's why things have to be a standing committee, because look how we've kept up to date on our policies. But we've had a significant gap when it came to our policies with disabilities, and we finally got those updated. January 23rd of this year, I sent each of the board members a memo entitled Streamlined CSE, CPSE Review Procedures. And the process was designed to achieve a more efficient, effective outcome while still fulfilling legal responsibilities. The board is required to review the recommended placement and program services for classified students for the primary purpose of arranging the services and the attendant funding. The board will arrange for special education programs and services based upon the recommendation of the CSE or CPSE subcommittee. And the recommendations are coming from the CSE, CPSE. August 11, 2015, during the board retreat, we all received a document that outlined the Board of Education responsibilities with respect to the law. And within that, the school board reviews the recommendations of the CSE. The school board must arrange for the programs and services, and only the CSE may determine the content of a student's IEP and a student's placement, primarily because they have intimate knowledge of the student's needs, in addition to state and federal law. U.S. Department of Education opinion, 2001. Only a student's IEP team may determine the content of the student's IEP. Only the group of individuals specified may determine the educational placement. And this opinion was embedded in one of the lawsuits that a school district was involved in presuming they were to look at IEPs. Regulations of the Commissioner of Education again emphasizes the CSE, recommended program, and placement. So the clarification, ultimately it's the CSE or CPSE subcommittee that makes the recommendations regarding placement services. And the board's responsibility is confined to reviewing the recommended placement and the recommended programs and services. The streamlined approach that was distributed in January this year is aligned with our own policies, and the district is in compliance with state and federal law. Family Resource Centers. Comment, the bottom line is all other districts in Rockland County support their own Family Resource Centers, and our district has not supported our FRC for a couple of years from what I learned. Family Resource Centers are funded in a variety of ways: grants, donations, legislative aid, district funding, i.e. local taxpayer dollars, and then a hybrid approach which combines the grants and district funding. The first part of the comment is inaccurate in that all other Rockland County school districts do not support their FRCs with district funds. In fact, one school district does not fund an FRC at all. The second part of the comment is also inaccurate in that our district has supported the FRC in each of the last couple of years and has in fact increased our portion of funding during that time. An additional comment, other FRCs in Rockland County are mostly funded by their districts, with grants and donations only partially supporting them. The comment is inaccurate. At least 2 other Rockland County school districts fully support their multiple FRCs entirely through grants. 3 Rockland County school districts use a hybrid approach, and only 1 school district funds their FRC mostly by district funds. And again, 1 school district does not fund an FRC at all. Our district's approach, we utilize a hybrid approach. Part of the funds are from a grant, part of the funds are from bullet aid from Assemblywoman Jaffe, and we've been very appreciative of that. She's contributed money each of the last 2 years. And then part of the funds come from the district, which has increased over the last couple of years. Here's Assemblywoman Jaffe's contributions for each of the last 2 years. And then, given the critical services the center provides, a population in great need, of any support we can provide, how's our district assuring our FRC will be sustained in the likely event of the donation being unavailable next year? As stated previously, our district has increased the funding to our existing FRC, and we will recommend continuing to do so should the need also continue. We won't continue the funding if there's not a need, but if there is a need, and right now it is apparent that there is, we would recommend to the board that the funding continue. Additionally, we have been and will continue assessing the need to provide an additional FRC, especially as our demographics continue to change. It is likely to be funded nearly entirely through grants. We heard Dr. Ivy talk at the last board meeting about the changing demographics at Montebello, and we have been looking very closely since the May-June timeframe about the possibility of adding an additional FRC on that campus due to those demographics, but it will likely be entirely funded through grants. Our district makes every effort to utilize the available grants to fund programs. The alternative, if we don't use grants or we don't use aid from Assemblywoman Jaffe or in some cases Senator Carlucci, the alternative is we could use local taxpayer dollars, district funds to fund the FRCs, or we could increase taxes, or we could reallocate existing funds should they be available. If the board wishes the district to discontinue the practice of using grant money, then please let us know as soon as possible so that we can ensure the concomitant tax increase is reflected in our district budget. Request for report. This Comes up on a number of occasions. Sometimes it's requested and knowledge of it. Sometimes it is not reported, but the process. Here are the comments. I've requested a copy of the school board budget in general that I'm still waiting to get for quite some time, so please make a note of that. Board of Education 14-15 budget details, not limited to the conference training budget. I've requested repeatedly since July, and we should not wait till budget presentations in January to review. We should have ample time to look at it and discuss possible ways to improve. Context, I have not received a request pursuant to policy 2110.1. I have included a report based upon board member development expenditures for 14-15 pursuant to 25-21. Here's our policy. Members should request information not related to meeting agenda items directly through the board president. I think that was also covered during the August retreat that everybody attended. In the event the request requires a special report that will divert staff from priorities, the superintendent will notify the board president and the board of this fact. Here were the expenditures for 14-15. This question's come up a number of times. Here are the expenditures from last year. The budget was $8,000, as we can see at the top. These were the expenditures, NSBA, NSBA, other professional development opportunities. So we were over budget last year by roughly $3,300. The discussions back in June or July was to try to limit the NSBA convention cost to about $2,000. This year it's in Boston to $4,000. And the other development opportunities to roughly $2,000. So you get the 2, 4, and 2 for a total of 8. The Board of Education also receives quarterly reports, revenues, and expenditures. It was on tonight's agenda with the first 8 lines dedicated to the Board of Education budget, which reflects expenditures, revenue, encumbrances. The Board of Education most recently received these reports on November 4th, February 10th, May 19th, again tonight. And additionally, the quarterly reports, revenues, and expenditures are also posted on the district's website. Kelly, would it be possible to pull up the quarterly report?
Dr. Adams, I never asked for a quarterly, I asked for the annual for the full 2014-15. I find it highly inappropriate the way you're responding to my requests in public.
I'm not responding to your request.
Hold on, some of my emails were quoted right there with quote unquote. I find it very unprofessional. This is not an item to be just standing up and giving comments. This is a discussion item where we're all part of the discussion. I'm highly disturbed by the context and what you're doing right now.
Well, thank you for your comment, Amani.
Number 1 was my colleague Dr. Howard's request. Number 2 and 3 were mine. This is not the format to respond.
I will have comments when you're done, very significant comments.
So if we take a look at the first 8 lines there, it shows the budget, it shows adjustments, year-to-date expenditures, the encumbrances outstanding, and the unencumbered balance. So that was a quarterly report from March of 2015, and the report tonight is very similar to that. So it does show the expenditures. The information is, like I said, on the website. Go back to the PowerPoint. And it's on quarterly reports.
Again, not what I asked for.
Right, so let me say something here. This show seems highly, first of all, inappropriate when all we've been asking for, Dr. Adams, is discussion. It's not a lecture, it's a collaboration, it's a discussion. And let me clarify, last year when I was asking about the RK hear me. So what I said to start again is that this show is highly inappropriate, that all we are asking for are discussions, collaboration. It is not impossible to do this. And I don't understand this mannerism of getting up and trying to intimidate is highly inappropriate. I just, in all my years, as an OBGYN resident, as a pediatric, as a neonatal fellow, I have never experienced anything quite like this, and it's really shameful that this is the example that we are providing for our community.
Regarding the CSE, which was also my concern for the past several months since the new format took place in January. I've aired constant concerns about that. I was trying to have an amicable discussion about how we can conserve resources, not have to send those reports to the 2 board members that review them to their doorstep while there's nothing really to read and there's not much information there anymore. And how can we conserve public funds of a private courier driving to my home at the time and another board members, currently 2 other board members, if there's really not much substance there. I was not trying to perform duties that are not listed on the Board of Education list of responsibilities, and no one in NISBA disagreed with my concerns. And again, there would have been a much better format to discuss that one-on-one or as a board, privately or publicly, much better than the format that just took place when I've been waiting since January to have that conversation. And our board president promised that she would talk to you and come back with some answers, which I never received until this. Your presentation is not posted anywhere, so we prepare a response. And to put it under superintendent comments is highly inappropriate. It's not comments, it's a response as part of a discussion. We requested discussions. I really appreciate the information you put out there regarding family resource centers that I would have loved to receive. Again, as part of a discussion or a presentation where we have a back and forth conversation. Or send me an email saying, you know, inaccurate, those districts are not paying for it, and I'll tell you what information I was able to gather myself. This is highly, highly unacceptable.
Anything else? Okay, on that note, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Teresa, Monahan, second?
Second.
Mr. Long, we lost somebody?
Step out of the record.
I'm taking a vote, he needs to go back in.
It doesn't have to go.
Where is he? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, he's gone.
You
So
call
moved.
me, Teresa.